The message had come in the middle of folding laundry. One sock in his hand and exhaustion in his bones. A blind date, set up by his sister, at a place he couldn't afford, on a night he usually spent helping his 8-year-old daughter with math homework and pretending he wasn't terrified of the future. He had laughed when he read it, a hollow sound in a quiet apartment that still felt too big since his wife had left 3 years ago. He was a single dad, juggling 2 jobs, surviving on cold coffee and stubborn hope. Romance felt like a joke life had already told him once. But sometimes the biggest changes begin as something you almost ignore. Before we step into that night with him, take a second. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, in love finding us when we least expect it, then please like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this are for hearts that still dare to believe. His name was Daniel Reyes, and most days he felt invisible. He woke before sunrise to prepare breakfast, braided his daughter Sophia's hair with clumsy determination, and walked her to school before heading to his first shift at a hardware store. In the evenings, he delivered groceries across town. He never complained, not out loud. But at night, when the apartment fell silent and Sophia's soft breathing drifted from the next room, the weight of everything pressed against his chest. Bills stacked up like quiet accusations. His old car made a new sound every week, and loneliness, sharp and uninvited, slipped into the spaces between responsibility and sleep. The blind date felt absurd against that backdrop. His sister had insisted. She had told him that the woman was kind, that she understood struggle, that he deserved at least one evening that wasn't about survival. Daniel had rolled his eyes and said he didn't even own a decent jacket. She had replied that she would drop one off. He stood in front of his mirror that Friday evening, adjusting a borrowed navy blazer that fit just slightly too tight across his shoulders. He felt like a child playing dress-up in someone else's life. Sophia sat on the edge of his bed, swinging her legs, studying him with solemn curiosity. She asked if he was nervous. He told her he was just tired. She smiled in that way children do when they see through adults, and told him that maybe tired people deserve something nice too. He kissed her forehead and left her with his neighbor, an older woman who had become family by proximity and shared struggle. As he drove toward the restaurant, he rehearsed polite phrases in his mind. He imagined awkward silence, pitying glances, the quiet realization that he wasn't enough. He almost turned the car around twice. The restaurant glowed with warm lights and polished windows, the kind of place where laughter floated easily and glasses clinked with confidence. Daniel parked at the far end of the lot, taking a moment to breathe. He checked his reflection in the rearview mirror and saw the faint lines at the corners of his eyes, the permanent hint of worry etched into his brow. He felt older than his 35 years. He stepped inside and immediately felt out of place. Conversations hummed around him. The scent of garlic and wine filled the air. He scanned the room for someone who looked like they might be waiting for a man who still calculated grocery totals in his head before reaching the register. And then he saw her. She stood near the window, her back partially turned, fingers loosely wrapped around a glass of water. She wore a simple emerald dress that caught the light softly. Nothing flashy, nothing loud. But there was something about the way she held herself, steady, grounded, that made his breath pause. When she turned and their eyes met, the world seemed to tilt slightly. This wasn't a joke. Her name was Elena Morales. He recognized it a second too late. Morales. The name printed on the side of delivery trucks he sometimes passed on his evening routes. The name attached to a chain of organic markets that had grown rapidly in the last few years. The name that occasionally appeared in local business articles. Elena Morales was not just kind. She was successful. Very successful. He felt heat rise to his face as he approached. He assumed there had been a mistake. Surely she wasn't here for him. But when he said his name, she smiled in a way that erased every doubt. It wasn't the practiced smile of someone used to cameras or networking events. It was real, soft around the edges, almost shy. They sat down. The first few minutes were predictably awkward. He stumbled over his words. He worried about saying the wrong thing. He noticed how different their worlds seemed. She spoke about long days at corporate offices and negotiating contracts. He thought about his hardware store shift and whether he had remembered to lock his car. And yet, as the conversation unfolded, something shifted. She asked about Sophia, and her eyes warmed in a way that couldn't be faked. She listened when he described packing school lunches and missing parent-teacher meetings because of double shifts. She didn't interrupt. She didn't offer hollow encouragement. She simply listened, as if his life, ordinary and messy, mattered. Daniel found himself speaking more honestly than he had in years. He admitted that he had been angry after his marriage fell apart. He admitted that some nights he felt like he was failing at everything. He admitted that he had almost not come because he assumed someone like her would never truly understand someone like him. Elena surprised him. She told him about growing up with a single mother who cleaned houses. She told him about studying under streetlights when the electricity was cut. She confessed that success had not erased loneliness. It had only disguised it. She spoke of boardrooms where she felt like an outsider, of friendships that faded when business got complicated, of evenings spent in a beautiful house that echoed too loudly. Daniel saw then that beneath the emerald dress and the confident posture was someone who knew struggle intimately. Halfway through the evening, a small accident changed everything. A waiter, rushing between tables, stumbled slightly and spilled red wine across the front of Daniel's borrowed blazer. The deep stain spread quickly, impossible to ignore. Conversations nearby quieted for a moment. Daniel froze. He thought of his sister's kindness, of how carefully he had tried to appear presentable. Embarrassment flooded him, hot and suffocating. He started to apologize. He reached for napkins. He felt small. Elena stood up calmly and helped blot the stain without a hint of judgment. She waved away the manager's frantic apologies and suggested they move outside to the patio for fresh air. There was no irritation in her voice, no concern about appearances. She acted as if the spilled wine was nothing more than a passing inconvenience. Out on the patio, under soft string lights and a cool evening breeze, Daniel laughed for the first time that night. Not a polite chuckle, but a genuine, unguarded laugh at the absurdity of it all. The tension broke like a snapped thread. They talked for hours after that. He told her about Sophia's dream of becoming an astronaut and the cardboard rocket they had built in their living room. She told him about her mother's stubborn pride and the first small store she had opened with borrowed money and fearless hope. They shared stories of failure, of almost giving up, of pushing forward anyway. Time blurred. When the restaurant began, stacking chairs inside, they realized how late it had become. Daniel felt a strange mix of gratitude and fear. Gratitude for a night that had felt unexpectedly beautiful. Fear that it might be a one-time miracle, a fleeting glimpse of something he wasn't meant to keep. In the parking lot, under dim lights, he thanked her for giving him a chance. He told her he knew their worlds were different. He said he understood if this had simply been a kind experiment. Elena looked at him with steady eyes and said that different did not mean incompatible. She said that she admired his strength more than any business deal she had ever closed. She said she would like to meet Sophia someday, if he was comfortable with that. The drive home felt surreal. Daniel replayed every moment in his mind. He half expected to wake up and discover it had been a dream born of exhaustion. But when he walked into the apartment and saw Sophia asleep on the couch, waiting up for him, he knew it had been real. He carried her to bed and whispered that maybe, just maybe, life had not finished surprising them. The following weeks were not magically easy. Daniel struggled with insecurity. He worried about being judged by Elena's colleagues. He worried about being seen as a charity case. He worked extra hours, determined not to appear dependent. Elena, for her part, faced whispers too. Friends questioned why she would date someone without status or wealth. They hinted that she could do better. But both of them had learned something long ago. Opinions are loudest when courage is required. Elena met Sophia on a bright Saturday afternoon at a small park. Instead of arriving with expensive gifts, she brought a kite. They spent hours running across the grass, laughing as the kite dipped and soared. Daniel watched from a bench, heart tight with emotion. Sophia's laughter, clear and unrestrained, felt like sunlight breaking through years of gray. That night, Sophia told him she liked Elena because she didn't talk to her like a child. She listened. Daniel realized that this, more than wealth or status, was what mattered. Months passed. Challenges continued. There were moments of doubt, moments when old fears resurfaced. But there were also quiet victories. Shared dinners, late-night conversations, a sense of partnership Daniel had not felt in years. One evening after Sophia had gone to sleep, Daniel stood on the balcony with Elena. The city lights shimmered below. He confessed that he had once believed his life would only shrink after divorce. Smaller dreams, smaller hopes. He admitted that he had been afraid to want more, because wanting made losing possible. Elena took his hand and told him that love was not about erasing fear, it was about choosing someone despite it. And that was when Daniel understood. The blind date he had thought was a joke had become a doorway, not into wealth or glamour, but into healing. Into rediscovering parts of himself he had buried beneath responsibility and regret. He had not needed a perfect woman. He had needed someone who saw him fully and stayed. If this story has touched your heart even a little, if it reminded you that hope can arrive disguised as coincidence, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who might need encouragement, and subscribe for more stories that celebrate real, imperfect love. And before we reach the end, I have a special request for you. In the comments, write the words "second chances are real" if you believe that no one's story is finished after heartbreak. Years later, Daniel would look back on that night as the moment everything shifted. Not because it solved his problems overnight, but because it changed how he saw himself. He was not just a struggling single dad. He was a man worthy of love, resilience, and joy. The joke he almost ignored had become the beginning of a new chapter. And sometimes, that is all it takes. One brave step into the unknown, one decision not to turn the car around, one evening that reminds you that even after loss, even after doubt, your heart is still capable of being chosen. Life had not been laughing at him after all. It had been preparing him for something beautiful.